Hello everyone, my name is Naguura and today I got a Season 4 TLDR dungeon guide for you. It has been a while since we played some of these dungeons that are going to be reappearing in Season 4, so I'm sure we all can use a little bit of a reminder on the most important mechanics to look out for, so I figured I'm going to do dungeon guides for all of those dungeons that we haven't played in a while. I'm also going to do other dungeon guides, this one here specifically for Mechagon Workshop, but I also upload all the other dungeon guides as well on my YouTube channel, so subscribe to my channel if you're interested in other guides to get notified whenever I upload more of them. Alright, so let's get into it. In the first boss room, interrupt the cast detonate by the bomb tonks, as it does AoE damage to the whole group otherwise. Other than that, it is important to understand how the hammers work in this room. They are located around the room, and you can trigger them by moving underneath them until a brown swirly appears. The hammer will then smash the ground and deal damage to friendly players, but also enemies caught in the smash. So you can utilize the hammers to kill the trash quicker. Additionally, the hammer will do increased damage the more players stood underneath it to trigger the smash, so it is very beneficial to have everyone in the group bait the smashes. The first boss fight consists of two bosses. The Platinum Pummeler needs to be tanked and has 3 stacks of a buff, making it immune to damage basically. To remove those stacks, the boss needs to be hit by the hammers, but each time a hammer removes a stack of said buff, it will also disable the hammer. No Mercy, on the other hand, does not disable the hammers if hit by them, and also doesn't need to be tanked. The boss has 2 main abilities, one charged towards a non-tank player, and an ability called Vent Jets. Vent Jets does a lot of damage to the whole group, and also does additional damage to players close to the jets, so make sure you move away. The trick to this boss is to use one hammer to kill No Mercy for you, while the tank is removing the stacks of the Platinum Pummeler with the other hammers. The way you do this is by positioning every non-tank player towards the hammers to make sure the boss charges on top of them. Then everyone baits the hammer smash onto the boss, dealing a great amount of damage to it. This can be repeated every time the boss charges. Once No Mercy is dead, you can also use the whole group to bait smashes for the Platinum Pummeler to increase the damage dealt to this boss as well. Now moving on, let's talk about the important abilities for the mobs between the first and the second boss. There are waste processing units, and they cast frontal cones towards the tank, and also do an AoE circle around itself. Then there's a lot of living wastes, and they explode when they die. It needs to be line of sighted, you cannot outrange it or anything, you can still use immunities of course, but most players will have to line of sight it around the pillars. To make sure you can line of sight easier, make sure you wait before you damage the living wastes until the tank has gathered them all up, because if you don't kill them at the very same time, it's going to be incredibly hard to line of sight the explosions. Then there's Junkyard Dogs, and the main ability is that they apply a magic dot to players that needs to be dispelled. If you have multiple dogs pulled at the same time, your healer might not have enough dispels to deal with the magic debuff, so make sure you either don't pull them at the same time, or you help the healer dispelling those debuffs. Now to the second boss, Kujo. This boss spawns boxes at players' locations, and these boxes need to be used to line of sight his big AoE channel called Venting Flames. If the boxes get hit by any mechanic of the boss, they will get destroyed. So you have to watch out for the boss's explosive leap, where he chooses 2 random non-tank players and jumps to the furthest player first, and the other targeted player second. This jump will destroy the boxes if you bait it too close to the boxes themselves, so make sure you don't do that. There are 2 tips for this boss. Number 1, the explosive leap can actually be cancelled if you use certain abilities like Feign Death or Invisibility. And additionally, you can also continue to cast and deal damage to Kujo while still being considered line of sight for the Venting Flames. To do this, you need to move the boss close to the box and position yourself to a corner of the box and just kind of wiggle around and see where you can still cast and not get hit by the Venting Flames. Now for the next trash spawn event, you have to watch out for the cast Giga Wallop from the Mechagon Tinkerers, as it does damage to a random player, and if many of those casts go through, one player might as well just die. Try to interrupt as many of those as possible, of course. The Tinkerers also cast explosive squirrels that explode with a blue big circle. They can be stunned to stop the explosion as well, but if you have a priest in your group, you can mind control the Tinkerers and use the squirrels to do damage to the trash as well. The next trash pack includes 2 defense bot MK1s, and they cast Arcing Sap, which applies a magic dot onto a random player. These dots do a lot of damage, and the healer usually doesn't have enough dispels to get rid of all of them, so help out your healer by using immunities or cleanses. There's also a defense bot MK3, and this mob casts Short Out, which is an AoE damage channel. It does a lot of damage and should usually be focused down to reduce the amount of short outs it casts. The last mob for the event is the Blastatron X80, and it targets random players to cast a frontal cone towards them, and it also channels something called Capacitor Discharge, creating an area around the mob that only leaves one safe zone, changing multiple times throughout the channel. If the mob gets moved to a corner, your range DPS can actually completely outrange this cast if needed. After this event, there's a small RP event and everyone needs to walk through an area without getting detected. Just avoid the circles and use the vents. If you stand on a vent, the mobs won't detect you even if you are inside their circle. The last trash group in front of the third boss includes a Tinkerer again, with the explosive squirrels and the Giga Wallop cast that should be interrupted. And there are also 2 defense spot MK1s applying the magic dots to the group, and additionally you also have a Mechagon mechanic and the Defender. The Defender will spawn shield generators, creating a yellow bubble reducing damage taken for everyone standing in it, friendly players and enemies. So make sure you stand in a bubble, but make sure the enemies or the mobs don't actually stand in a bubble. Keep in mind you can also accidentally kill the shield generator, so try to avoid that. The next boss is Sparkflux and is one of the more difficult bosses in this dungeon. This boss is all about dodging stuff. There are swirlies on the ground, fire beams rotating around the room, and cogwheels flying around. The longer the fight takes, the more you need to dodge, so using Bloodlust here is a good idea. The only other thing to watch out for is the inconspicuous plants. They spawn at the edges of the room and will channel damage onto players. You can stun them to interrupt the cast, so definitely go and do that. Before you get to the last boss, you will have to deal with some spider tanks. These mobs have a lot of HP and cast a frontal towards a random player. It sounds easy enough, but if you pull 2 spider tanks at the same time, it can be very hard to see and dodge the frontals. A trick is to just have the whole group stack up and move together. Then you just move clockwise whenever you see a frontal being cast by one of the spider tanks, or just pull them mobs one by one. In the last boss area, you get the same mobs you have already fought before, but in a very difficult combination. Especially the last trash pack right in front of the boss is hard to deal with, so if you can somehow skip that pack, you should probably do so. Now the last boss has 2 phases. In the first phase you fight the aerial unit. A mechanic that persists through both phases are the electric sparks. They are located around the room and deal a lot of damage if you touch them. Once in a while they will recalibrate, basically moving all of the sparks to a random player's location, indicated by an arrow. If you get caught in the path, you will also get hit by them, so watch out for that. The aerial unit will cast Giga Sap on a random target, and this is not avoidable and will create a beam towards the player. Anyone caught in the beam will get a big dot applied to them, so make sure it only ever hits the targeted player and no one else. Once the aerial unit is dead, you will enter phase 2. In phase 2 you will have to deal with the sparks and the Giga Sap, and additionally the boss will also spawn a magneto arm, dragging players and sparks towards a random location. Make sure you don't get hit by any sparks during this mechanic. And that's it. I hope I managed to help you refresh your memory on this dungeon, and if you've never done the dungeon before, I hope the guide was easy enough for you to understand. And if you want to check out any of the other guides for the Season 4 dungeons, then make sure you check out my other videos. I'm gonna upload guides for all of those Season 4 dungeons. And yeah, hope you enjoy Season 4, and I'll see you guys on stream. Have an amazing day.